Alrighty. Welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining us on this lovely Tuesday evening. I am joined by a wonderful group of panelists. They're my classmates at DGSOM, but they're also in both the Prime and Drew programs, doing wonderful work. They're amazing humans, and I'm so grateful that they agreed to collaborate with me on this panel to showcase them and the Prime and Drew programs and all of the wonderful things that they're doing. Before we start, and we're going to do some introductions from all of our panelists, but before we start, I wanted to give them just an opportunity to talk to everybody here about what the Prime and Drew programs are, just give a little overview for those of us who don't know or want to learn more about it. So would anyone like to just kind of take that and just give a quick little rundown of your program?
I love how I saw Joy intentionally turn off her mute her microphone, but yeah, I could give a little bit of it. So for Prime program, Prime's about leadership and advocacy, and in addition to being a part of the traditional DGSOM class, we're also in our small little cohort. Right now we have 18 people in our cohort, I believe. 18, right? 18. But yeah, so it's like a small little group. And we're geared, like our curriculum or sort of our program structure is geared towards serving those who are underserved in the Los Angeles community. But not just as being a physician, but also thinking of different ways. So that's why part of the program is that we'll be completing a master's program in our 4th year. And so that allows us with, extra flexibility, extra resources and tools at our disposal to help our community in a sort of a wider aspect. So that's part of the program. And then we have Charles Drew, which again is also geared towards serving the underserved community in Los Angeles. And it's a little bit different in terms of first 2 years we're with the DGSOM class, but the last 2 years will be at King Drew Hospital, where we'll be serving with a more diverse population and more diverse population and more at-risk individuals who we are working with. So that's a general overview. Anyone want to add anything, feel free. But yeah, we're all about the people. We're all about the community.
Great. Thank you so much, Bryce, for that overview. And oh, Precious, did you want to add something?
I don't know if did you talk about the master's program already? Did you talk about the master's degree? Sorry.
I just briefly brought it up.
Okay. Yeah, sorry, I must have missed it, but just was trying to help you out. But yes, master's degree in something that will help us be better leaders and advocates in the communities that we want to serve one day, that will be underserved communities, most likely.
Awesome. Thank you guys for that description. And I also linked Prime program FAQ in the chat, and also a link to the Drew program, so our attendees can look at that. And we'll also have time for Q&A at the end. So if you have any further questions about those programs, our panelists are here and available to answer those. But in terms of the structure of this panel, we're going to start with panelist introductions. So each of them will just give kind of talk about their own story in terms of where they're from, their hometown undergrad, and just relevant activities that they participated in and experiences and memories that led them to pursue medicine, and also just kind of touch on how their journey fits in with the values of the Prime and the Drew programs. And then we'll transition into talking about why you should apply to the Prime and Drew programs and why they're so special. And then we'll have a little talk on what the master's year looks like, which has been mentioned a bit. And then we'll spend the last 15 minutes doing an audience Q&A. So be thinking of your questions, and you feel free to, when we get to that point, unmute yourself or just chat them to me and I can answer them as well. So let's get started with our panelist introductions, if anyone would like to go first.
We can do alphabetical order.
Bryce, does that mean you're going?
I feel like alphabetical order is always done, so we should do reverse alphabetical order. No, I'm just kidding. I can go first too. So hey everyone, my name is Bryce Bentley. I was born and raised in Southern Los Angeles. And I also went to UCLA for undergrad. So I've been in LA for like all my life. Really love the place. It's a great place to live. So sort of like just my background and journey, like briefly, is that sort of what we're, okay, I'm trying to think. I sort of knew, it won't be like too long, but I think I knew I wanted to go into medicine when some of my family members would constantly be in the hospital, and especially my family members are particularly older and have a lot of like chronic diseases like diabetes, high blood pressure, suffer from strokes and different other like afflictions. And so that's sort of what got me into this realm of like, oh, what can I do to like help the people in my community and especially address all these health issues, because I was like really into health as an athlete and just in general just loved like biology and how the body works. And so then while I was in undergrad, I participated in a lot of like volunteer activities, whether it was helping out with like spreading awareness for like these cardiovascular issues in teenagers and children's for sudden cardiac arrest, or high blood pressure in African American populations, tutoring elementary kids about public health and lifestyle practices, and a lot of various other things. And so I took one gap year after going to undergrad, and where I volunteered at it was like I think the term is medical respite. So basically individuals who are experiencing homelessness and health issues are like housed in this facility. And so I was their caregiver, where I'd help cook, clean for them, and sort of help manage their like, make sure that they're like healthy and address any needs that they have. And so that's sort of what led me here. And again, want to serve the underserved population. I'm not too particularly sure what direction, whether it's with individuals experiencing homelessness or specific community of a specific ethnic background, but I'm just here for the people. So that's my story.
Thanks so much, Bryce. Round of applause. Is there anyone who's itching to go next?
I'll go. I'm looking at Joy and Sam's like, like, okay, I'll go. Give them some time to think. So my name is Precious Bowman. I'm from Los Angeles. I was born in Riverside and moved here to LA when I was about 8. So I consider myself to be from Los Angeles. And what kind of got me interested in medicine, growing up, my mom struggled with addiction, and I would have to, in her mental health, and I would have to be in and out of the hospital with her at such a young age. And for me, that gave me my first introduction to the healthcare system, the good and the bad of it, and just seeing how her health really impacted her and her ability to like care for my family. And that was important to me, trying to understand that from a young age. And then it just kind of grew into, as I like pursued my education a lot more, an interest in like science, and interest in medicine, and just like how everything intersects, and then how all that comes back to like how do we improve the health for those who like struggle with mental health, those who have who are just disproportionately affected by health disparities. So my childhood and like my mom and just my exposure to the healthcare system at a young age really kind of drove me towards medicine. And then from there, I went into college. I, majored in biology because it was the only class I got a C in when I was in high school. So I was like, okay, maybe we could just do this again and see if that works out. Plus, I knew like it was important if I wanted to go into healthcare. And yeah, I struggled a lot. I went to San Diego State University, and I didn't know anything about college, so I had to kind of figure that out. It was rough. And then, but I did find a lot of enjoyment in my extracurricular activities. I joined the Black Student Science Organization, and I was a tutor for students like from K through 12 who were in like primarily like underserved communities. And then from there, I went on to do other things. I was involved in the Flying Samaritans. I believe there's one at UCLA. I was very nervous about that. I, got my passport and started going to Mexico once a month, sometimes twice a month, to first be a clinic coordinator and then be the president of the org. And basically what we do, for those who aren't familiar with Flying Samaritans, we organize like free clinics in Mexico once a month. And then the most vital thing we could do is like bring meds, bring physicians in, other healthcare providers, and just provide a service that in communities that are in need, and it gave really some good exposure to like a different community, something different than growing up in like South LA. So I thought that was very, very important and key for my development. And then outside of that, I did some research. I didn't like it. I still don't like it, but I'm still trying. And then I worked a lot. That was like my main thing that really impacted me too, in my growth and as a pre-med student. I worked in surgery and as like a surgical nursing assistant. And then I worked at Children's Hospital Los Angeles as a care coordination assistant for the resident physician teams. And then I did a couple of those summer prep programs. I know UCLA has a prep program, and then there's the SHPEP program. I did those. So all of that kind of like helps craft my narrative and how I got here. And it exposed me to actually the Prime and the Drew program. I met Prime and Drew students when I did the UCLA prep program. And that's kind of how I realized like, oh, there are medical schools that care about building physicians who will address health disparities one day, who are learning to interact with people that come from different backgrounds, who aren't just like siloed into like, okay, I come from one background and this is like the background I'm going to treat. Like, no, I'm going to care for all these different type of patients that come from different type of health disparities and that I might not be familiar with. And that's what I learned. And that's why this was always my top choice. So yeah, that's just a little bit about me and how I got here.
I can go next since Joy is drinking tea. Hi, everyone. My name is Samantha, but most of my friends call me Sam or Sammy. I am from LA, specifically Santa Monica. Like Bryce, I didn't leave LA. I went to college at USC, so fight on. Joy is my other fellow Trojan here. And yeah, I think in high school, I used to say I wanted to be a doctor, but I was really all over the place. When I applied to college, I applied to some schools as pre-med, pre-pharm. I even applied to a nursing school. I was really unsure what I wanted to do in medicine when it came down to it, because I'm a first generation student. So I didn't know what like the path entailed for any of those. So I was all over the place. When I started college, I really struggled. Imposter syndrome, just really, just a hard year. I didn't feel like I belonged at USC. It definitely affected my grades. I also felt really lost with like what I wanted to do with my life, which is pretty normal. And so I kind of decided maybe this medicine path isn't for me, because I was struggling in like science classes and just was like pre-nothing for a bit. And I think I naturally gravitated towards like health and medicine. So I was like, maybe I'll find something else that I can do within this field. So even though I wasn't technically like pre-med for most of my undergraduate career, I was still engaging in like pre-health, pre-med activities just because I naturally gravitated towards that. So for me, that was health education. I was really involved with an organization called Peer Health Exchange, which really helped me find my passion for health education. And so through that, I ended up working at a community health center. It started off as an internship at USC, like during the summer between my junior and senior year. And that health center was in South Los Angeles. And I worked with a really diverse patient population. I was doing health education work there, and eventually ended up getting a job there that I continued during my senior year and for 2 years after I graduated from college. And I would say that was like the game changer in my life. I met really incredible mentors who were physicians, who looked like me and who had like similar experiences in college. They were first gen and they struggled, and there they were as physicians, and they were the mentors I needed in my life to, motivate me and show me that I could do this, even though I had a rough year, like my freshman year. And then the patient population and the work I was doing, it really inspired me to just go for it. And one of my mentors at the clinic, she told me, just do a post-bac and don't look back. And it was super corny when I it sounds corny when I say it, but that's exactly what I did. So I just took I did an informal post-bac at UCLA Extension. And in the middle of that, of trying to figure out what I wanted to do in college, I should back up. I applied to a master's program, which Joy and I both did. USC allows you to take, if you get into a master's program as an undergraduate at USC, you can be a dual degree student. So I was doing master's classes and I was like, let me finish this master's and then I'll start my post-bac. So I started my post-bac probably like a year after I graduated from USC, and took 4 gap years. I remember I felt so uncomfortable with the idea of taking so many gap years, and it felt like I was behind. I was seeing all my friends who were pre-med, just going into medical school. But looking back, I would not change anything in my path. I'm so grateful for the enrichment years I had. I don't even like to call them gap years anymore. And so for those of you who are on gap years and feel, if that's relatable, just know that the time you spent off and the work you're doing is going to help you so much when you're in medical school. And anyways, my time at St. John's, which was the clinic I worked at, really inspired me to go to a medical school that would kind of help me build off of the knowledge and skills that I gained while working in a under-resourced community, that would allow me to work in a similar type of community as a medical student. And so when I was applying to med school, I applied to all the special programs that were like Prime and Drew. And I just knew I wanted that focused sort of path in my medical education, but I also wanted a community. I was really terrified of going into med school and struggling again like I did my first year of college. And I wanted a community of people who would understand my journey, would relate to it. And I wanted a specialized dean and director who would be there for me when I needed them, and would, I didn't want to be lost. And that's exactly what you get in Prime and Drew. And I think it's really special to be in both, because you can always turn to your Prime staff to ask questions and your Drew staff to ask questions. And it's amazing to have so much support. I've never had this much support in all my 4 years of college. And so I think it's really great for any first gen student or student who maybe is the first in their family to become a physician, to be in this type of program.
I think it's my turn. Good evening. My name is Joy. I'm a second year student here in the Drew and the Prime programs, like everyone else. My story is going to sound very similar, I think, to what everyone said. And I think just listening to my classmates, even though I know a bit of their stories already from just doing med school with them for the past year or so, it's always interesting to me each time I hear us speak and realize just this type of similarities that we have. But a little bit about me. I'm originally from Nigeria. I was born there and I was raised there for part of my life. And ever since I moved to the US, I have called Los Angeles home. I also went to USC. I studied global health and biology while at USC. And then I loved USC so much. Well, I did, but I have other reasons too, that I stayed a little bit after and I did a master's program. The one that Sam mentioned, it's called a progressive degree, and I did it in global medicine with a track in management specifically. So if I glance elsewhere, it's because I'm looking at the things I'm supposed to speak on. I think relevant activities in my undergraduate years that prepared me, I think, for medical school. So I mentioned I studied global health as an undergrad, and then I did global medicine as a graduate degree. So in case you're wondering, I think global health is something that I have a really big interest in. And ultimately, I think for me, and I'm going to talk about this a little bit when I speak about why I chose Prime Drew, just really the value that I see in health equity and being a part of an institution that values it just like I do. But while in college, I was involved in a little bit of everything. I did research, I did the basic science type research, but a lot of the research that I particularly enjoyed was clinical public health research. I remember I did a research project with a mentor once where we studied the impact of indoor air pollution on children in the East African region. And I remember really enjoying it and feeling like, okay, so research doesn't necessarily mean me in a cold room pipetting for 3 hours, although my pipetting skills are quite good, but there are alternatives, right? And so I think that was when I started to really, I think, form an identity and figure out essentially what interested me. I volunteered in different clinical spaces, mostly for really underrepresented, underserved, under-resourced communities. I love kids, I love to teach. And so I think some of the most prominent and impactful things that I did in undergrad, I worked with an organization that catered to foster kids. I used to teach at local elementary schools, teach high school kids about human rights. So all of those things, whatever I was doing, I think I was really just making sure I was doing things in line with what I think, my value system is, which is addressing health inequity in any way that I can. I did know I wanted to go into healthcare, whether specifically learning about global health, those things, I think those came with time in college, but I went into college knowing that I wanted to go into health. I had an idea of medical school, but very much like my classmates said, it wasn't until different clinical experiences I had. For example, I shadowed at a family care clinic during my enrichment years where I worked with a doctor who, honestly, the majority of the patients were Black and brown, some were unhoused, many were immigrants, many were non-English speaking, where I saw, my family in those patients. I saw the types of patients that I think everyone needs the healthcare system the most, but the types of patients that the healthcare system sometimes forgets about. And it wasn't until experiences like that that I really felt like, you know what, this is really it for me. And so in my enrichment years, that's what we call it in Prime. We call them enrichment years. We don't call them gap years. Gap almost implies, for some of us, it means like for some people, gap years are not a thing of luxury, right? So many of us were doing a post-bac, working, things like that. So for anyone out there who is not comfortable with what you're doing in your enrichment years, I hope it's worth it, every single thing you're doing. But anyway, so for what I did a little bit of everything. After I finished the master's program, I did I call it a DIY post-bac. I focused on taking more science classes and making sure I was more competitive, the MCAT, all of those things. I worked as a tutor and as a nanny, but perhaps the most really interesting thing I think I did that is not very common among med students was that I had a full-time job where I worked in the marketing field. So that was very unique. I was the only person in my job. It was like an actual office, like a desk job. And I walked in every day with my fancy outfits and, just walked in with my all professional and everything. And it was marketing, but we did a lot of work with environmental health and social work, for example. So it was a really nice tie-in to see how the environment and climate change really impacts human health. And so after I did that, it was, call it med school time. Very much the same thing that my peers said, but I think to speak specifically about myself, I knew going in, even before I applied to the Prime and Drew programs, that whatever med school I would end up at had to be a medical school that prioritized health equity, social justice, things like that. And so for me, finding out that I was in Prime Drew, I think once you get over the whole shock of I got into med school and wow, I've literally been slaving. And then if you're someone who took the MCAT multiple times, and if your family and your friends and your support network is involved, once all of that just hits you, and then it wears down. And that was me. And then I sat there and I, really thought about it as in, wow, I'm really getting the opportunity for the next 4 to 6 years or however long it takes to really be at a school doing programs that literally are the definition of the way I see life, the way I see health, the way I value people. It, for me, was a very easy decision to choose these programs. And I'm happy it was a mutual fit. But anyway, that's a little bit about me.
Thank you all for being so open and vulnerable to share your stories that were so inspiring. We all look up to you. I actually had a mentor in undergrad who also disliked using the term gap years. She called them years of opportunity. So I really like that. And I like enrichment years as well. So that's what I call them too from my mentor from undergrad. So that's great. I think we should all change the term to one of those. Let's go ahead and transition into why someone should choose the Prime and the Drew program. What opportunities would you say that these programs offer that are different from others? What is the most rewarding aspect of these programs? And would you all be able to speak on, if there's any scholarships available or, opportunities like that for students to pursue?
I can I can go first this time. And I think between all four of us, we'll probably have very different things to say. But I can start by speaking about the community. I think some of my peers already mentioned it, but so the Prime program historically has it's 18 to 20 students. The Drew program has about 24. And between those two programs, 4 students overlap. So the 4 of us here are 4 out of the 24 in the Drew program, and are 4 out of in our cohort, the 18 students in Prime. So, and then our medical school class, our current class, I believe is 174 students. So I love being at a med school that honestly has a lot of people. It's quite nice. There's so many different perspectives and people to learn from every single day. But I think it is such a great thing to start medical school in a way that, so we do something called, they call it Prime Summer or Drew Summer. It's just a pre-matriculation. So before medical school began, for Prime was a month, about a month. For Drew was about 2 weeks. And we spent all day, typically it's in person at UCLA and the campus, but for us it was on Zoom. And we spent the 2 weeks / a month learning about social justice, health reform, advocacy, leadership. I'm so sorry, I think I said 24 in Drew, it's 28. I got a correction from Precious, thank you, Precious. And then us 4, the additional to make it 28. But anyway, so we spent the whole summer learning about all of these topics. And I think honestly, when you are spending every single day with people for anywhere on Zoom for 5 hours to maybe 8 hours daily, I think you start to like them. And even if you don't know them and you haven't met them in person, you really bond with them. I think both programs do a really good job of making sure that you know each other's stories to the comfort that people are willing to share about. And I think for me, it really, and I think my peers would agree, it's nice being a part of a larger school and a larger institution, but also having just this small little community, whether it's the 28 in Drew or the 18 to 20 in Prime. I think it's really nice just starting med school almost with a built-in community, built-in friends. And even if, for many of us, we also have friends outside the Prime and the Drew communities, there's this idea that regardless, Prime and Drew is your core, and you can always go back to those communities. We celebrate each other's birthdays and things like that, and we check in with each other. If there's something that upset you about a situation you saw in school or in class, there's 18 or 28 people who will 9 times out of 10 or 10 times out of 10 feel the same way that you do and will support you and will add their name to an email or will email on your behalf, for example. So I think in terms of the community among our peers, I think that's a really big part. And if someone else wants to speak about our directors and things like that, please feel free, but I'll start there.
Yeah, I guess I can continue off next. And yeah, I guess definitely want to, sorry, definitely want to highlight the sort of community aspect, the sort of the like-mindedness that we have. It's towards that common goal of wanting to work towards social justice and address the issues in our community. And it might not always be the same community that we like initially came in here knowing. Like we have individuals who are well aware of people who are immigrants and facing like immigrant issues, or individuals from a certain like ethnic background or religious background or a certain region, rural or whatnot. And so, but from that, we all learn each other's stories, all learn each other's passions, and learn like why, like, you know, our personal views. So we understand why our personal views are important, but we need to understand why other people's personal views and other struggles that different communities have that needs to be addressed. And so that kind of like, you have that coalition of individuals. And like our program directors, yeah, they're the bomb, just straight up. Dr. Moreno and Emma for Prime just always have our backs, you know, whenever we have questions, really help us connect with individuals, whether it's for research or for getting mentors, or sort of like piecing together what we need to have in order to succeed academically, or just what we want as personal goals. And then we have the Drew, people in Drew, especially Dr. Comas and everyone that's involved, who, and Kaylin, who constantly check upon us. That we'll like meet as a class and discuss, you know how the year went, or how the block went. We'll have these bonding exercises with but like the year before us. Tons of like, I'm trying to think of what other things. I mean, there's just so many different things, different opportunities. But at the very most, they're always like a helping hand for us to get connected with. And Drew has his own resource of faculty and staff that we can reach out to, either mentorship or have like these different opportunities to pursue our goals. And so it's really, you get that community aspect, and you also get that extra resource and that extra hand to help you through the chaos that is medical school.
I can go next. I'm just going to add some more context to what Bryce said. I started off medical school going through like a rough time with like family health issues, and it was so nice to have staff and faculty that were there for me from the get-go, like before school even started, and to have one-on-one meetings with Dr. Kalmaz, who is like the dean of the Drew program, and to have Emma, and who is I think she's like a director-ish role. I'm not quite sure of Emma's full title, but she is like our Prime mama bear. And then Dr. Moreno, who is also a director for Prime. To have them checking in on me meant so much to me, and it was exactly like why I wanted to be in Prime and Drew when I chose to go here. And they still continue to be there for me for like, you know, school matters, obviously. It's nice to have a soundboard to, you know, bounce ideas off of, you know, when you're thinking of like what research to do or programs to do over the summer. I can email Dr. Moreno or Dr. Comas and set up a meeting with them very easily. And, you know, I have this memory of like speaking with Dr. Moreno, like as he was driving home from clinic, like, and just talking to him about like different things that I was wondering before I started second year. And I think that, you know, most med schools will support you. It's not like pre-med. They want you to thrive, and they want you to pass. So you're gonna hopefully find support like that at any med school. But I think that I don't know, maybe it's more accessible in being a part of Drew and Prime because it's a small cohort. And I really value that because, like I said, being a first generation student and navigating med school is just like a whole nother beast. And, you know, in addition to that, the Prime community is really special, like being able to reach out to your classmates when things are rough, and having that little home base that you can always turn to is really special. And also the upperclassmen, they have our back. And I think that it's nice to just start med school with so many resources at your disposal, and so many people that are rooting for you to do well. I think Keely asked about scholarships too, and I see that in this question. We have, you know, the same scholarship opportunities that the regular Geffen class has. So there's the LA Care scholarship and the Geffen scholarship, which are full rides, and different other smaller scholarships. And so I think that, you know, a large number of our Drew and our Prime cohort have these scholarships. And I think that, you know, maybe being in a smaller cohort allows like the deans to advocate for you. I'm not really sure. But, you know, keep that in mind. You have the same opportunities as the regular Geffen class.
I think they answered everything very beautifully. I don't have much to add, to be quite honest. I relate to Joy, Bryce, and Sam's words about why they chose to come here, why you should be in Prime and Drew. And also, yeah, for me, again, it was a large part of it was I learned about it when I did the UCLA prep program. And that program, it was very important for me because I had to figure out everything like step by step, like how to even get to college, how to like get through my education. And since I was the first in my family to do so. And then knowing that Prime and Drew, they give you some structure. And I like that. I might not know like what it looks like, how to get to graduation, to getting my MD, but I have confidence that Sam, Joy are going to figure it out. Bryce is going to figure it out, and that I can, whatever information that they find, that they share with me, and they let me, and we hold each other accountable. Like, hey, you know, you have to start thinking about which master's degree programs that you need to be applying to, not just the Prime office and not just Drew, but them also holding me accountable and telling me like, oh, what I might not be aware of because I'm like drowning in what is medical school. So just knowing that I have a support system that's built in to the medical school, into my cohort, and yeah, that kind of like what really kind of drove me to want to come here. I think like that's one of the key aspects of why you should apply to Prime and Drew, is the amazing support system if you are someone who wants that structure. And also just knowing that I don't have to worry about everything, that there will be times when I worry about like, am I supposed to be thinking about research right now, all these other things, but like it's kind of ingrained into our learning and our curriculum we have as Drew students. That's like one of the milestones we have to reach before graduating, is that we do like a structured research project that Drew helps us with, and helps us, like they have statisticians at the Charles Drew University who can help me. I don't know stats. That's like literally the bane of my existence in medical school. And like, it stresses me out almost once a week. And I know like, it's okay. Like that the Drew program will give me some resources that will help me with that, especially when it comes to me as like a fourth year or third year during my master's year. So all these things, all these questions and concerns and my fears are really like taken care of by being in these programs. And then also I know like the scholarship things, like Sam answered that beautifully. There's nothing that you apply to, really just like put your all into being an amazing applicant, telling your story, sharing your narrative. And it's really like all medical schools, if you find yourself like in a hardship, like connecting with, like Sam said, like we have other people that we can reach out to and like say like, hey, you know, financially, this is like a tough decision. Like, how can we, like, what can we do? And then I know that Charles Drew has like their own scholarships too that they're able to help students with. So like UCLA and Charles Drew are they're like two different medical schools. So even though it's a combined program, so they have their own like resources that they can help students with. So that's another benefit of being in both programs.
I want to transition a bit to talk about the master's year. Maybe just one or two people could address this. I want to have some time for the Q&A at the end, but I was hoping you guys could talk about, the value of having an additional degree is and how this would fit into the work that you hope to do as a physician.
I can jump in. At UCLA, the faculty are always saying like, we want to develop you into a physician and like you decide the and. And so I think even before I started med school, I already hoped to be like that. I want to continue like doing health education work and designing programs based on like whatever specialty I go into. And so for me, I really wanted a master's in public health to give me the tools to do that. And I think that we can pursue whatever master's degree we're interested in as long as we can tie it back to it's giving us value to help under-resourced communities. And so I think that's really awesome that we have this built-in time to add more tools to our toolkit and to do research and to learn more. And so I think it depends on like what masters you want to go into. But I think for me, it was just a great opportunity to build off like the work that I'm really passionate about outside of like medicine. And then like you can be in Prime and already have a master's degree. So like Joy and I mentioned, we did the global medicine program. And for us, since it was a dual degree program, it was like a baby master's. We didn't have to take as many classes. And I got a taste of public health through the master's, but I really wanted to do more. So that is why I decided like, I'm okay with pursuing another master's degree. I want it to complement my medical education and give me that lens, that broad lens, and I want to be able to think about how health exists outside of the walls, like of the clinic. And that's where all of these health disparities intersect. And so I think that a master's in public health would help me just continue to learn how to best serve the communities I hope to serve as a future physician.
That was a wonderful answer. Would anyone else like to add anything additional?
Nothing. Honestly, Sam's response was perfect. And I also want to re-emphasize a point that she mentioned, that you don't have to come into, what's it called? You don't have to necessarily do a master's in public health or what's another common one that people might think is in line with the Prime and Drew mission, like public policy. Many people in Prime have done an MBA, for example. If you wanted to do a master's in social work or a master's of laws and things like that. So there's many ways to make an impact, and it doesn't all have to be the same. So for definitely what Sam said, if you are thinking about one of our programs and are feeling like, but I don't think an MPH is not the route I want to go into, I want to do a master's in education, for example, it's 100% fine. As long as it's somehow going to make the world, as cliche as it sounds, a better place, help you to make an impact in under-resourced communities, it would be fine. But talk to our directors about that when you're here so they can give you more specific advice.
Awesome. Okay, we have a few questions that were sent to me. I have a couple asking the same thing. One is, can you talk about advice for preparing for interviews for Prime and Drew?
I would say regarding interviews, very important to know what you, I guess ahead of time, what you want to let the program know. Have in your mind like what sort of stories relevant, what sort of stories are most important that sort of tell who you are as a person, what your goal is, and what you understand. So for like the interviews, there'll be MMIs. And so while MMIs are in a way like less personal, as in like a one-to-one interview, it still allows you to have like go really in depth with these questions and allow you to tailor what you want the faculty and the committee to know. So it's all basically on your terms of trying to like convey the story using the questions that are like being asked. But make sure you just show your passions and show that you know, yeah, have your passions that are aligned with the values that Drew and Prime like hold in terms of like social justice and serving the community, because that's what we want. That's what we're looking for.
Feel free, anyone else, to jump in on that question. There's also another one, which is, how do you balance school and personal life throughout medical school? Which is a wonderful question.
For preparing for the interview, I recommend like being familiar with your application. Like, just, I know sometimes it can be like a long like period from when you write what you write in your responses to when you go to your interview. So just like reread what you wrote, your whys, and how you answered certain prompts, because you want to make sure that they're in alignment when you're going into that interview, and that you're comfortable with some of the questions that might come. I know I went to an interview and I was asked a question that kind of threw me off, and it kind of like shook the interview for me. So yeah, I like cried in my Drew interview. I did not think I got it at first because I wasn't expecting something, and I could have better prepared. Like, okay, like, oops, like, you know, I wrote that a long time ago, and I should have probably like been prepared for something like that. It worked out, obviously, but still, like, you know, that can be one thing. And then after that interview, I learned the hard way, obviously, is you should read the mission of the school you're going into the interview for. So like, be familiar with the Drew mission, the Prime mission, not just the UCLA David Geffen School of Medicine mission. And then you can also just like look up MMI questions ahead of time to like familiarize yourself with the type of questions that you're asked, because they have the same kind of themes, and that can help you during those sessions. But really, it's no way to really prepare completely, but that can give you a leg up. And then the personal life and school question, I'm still working on that. It is very difficult. I'm from LA, obviously. I have a lot of friends who aren't in medicine, and I'm still constantly trying to figure out like, how do I like explain like, this is not just like any final exam, like this is like important. And it's a constant battle, and yeah, it's hard. And even my grandma, she texts me all the time, you could check in on me. I try my best. I guess it's just really like giving yourself grace, knowing like when it's like, you are the only one who knows your schedule too. Sometimes when you have like people outside of the sphere who don't know like what's going on, like you have to like, you know, they might push you like to come like hang out with the family sometime or like something like that, but you have to understand like your limits, and also like seeing my other classmates and seeing like when they're buckling down, like, oh, I should be buckling down too. Like this is important. Like I should be putting in as equal amount of work. And sometimes I tell my friends and my family that, you know, like, oh, you know, like everybody else at school is working super hard. So like and they're like, oh yeah, you got to be like the rest of your classmates, don't fall behind. So that helps too sometimes.
Yeah, I think the question about balancing med school and non-med school it's always a fun one, because I think honestly most med students do not have a very like the best answer. I think a lot of us have an idea of what we do that has worked, but we also have a list of things that we advise but maybe do not do, but are working on doing or plan to do. I think for I think Precious, I think Precious brought up a lot of really good points. And it's definitely a challenge when sometimes it's with friends who are not in medical school. I remember a few weeks ago, I had something come up, and it was something, an event, and this was right around finals. And it just, I had to memorize, I had to sit there. I needed to make sure I was comfortable with microbiology before really doing anything. And so I think it's hard at first, but I think you get better at saying, I can't this time, I'll make it up to you, or let's take a rain check. That's it's my go-to now. Perhaps I can't come this day, but maybe the weekend after, I will personally, meet with you at the park or the restaurant or whatever COVID safe activity it is. So I think that's been really helpful. I'm personally big on organizing. It doesn't mean my physical space is always as organized, but I love a Google Calendar. Mine is actually nicknamed Galia. So you all are special. Not a lot of people know that, but it's named after one of my favorite words we learned in anatomy. But beside the point, let me just show all my nerdy tendencies. But yes, I have it in there. I put my school things in there, but at the same time, I definitely schedule in fun things. I schedule in naps. Sometimes they're different colors so that it looks serious when I'm looking at the calendar, but it's really not. It's just a nap time. And one thing I've really been learning this year is that just because you're not studying just because you are not doing anything does not mean you need to be studying. I think there's a tendency sometimes with medical students where you feel like, I'm not studying, so I'm being unproductive, and because of that, I'm not going to do well. And I've really been learning that just because I'm not doing anything does not mean this is not productive in some way. So I think those moments of rest are definitely just necessary to just help you feel more grounded. Are doing yoga, taking in that rest time, or you are napping. Maybe it's just you sitting there and staring at people walk by, and whatever it is, but just really learning that your productivity does not equal what you are or who you are. I think once you start getting a little bit better about that, and it comes with time in med school. I haven't gone there yet, but I'm working on it.
I'll throw another question out there. Is there anything that you don't like or would want to change about Prime and or Drew?
I will say the summer program, like the summer, so because if we do like Joy explained, the summer programs that are introduction to medical school, we have to be in like both of them at once, like the Prime summer and the Drew summer program. And we miss things because of that, opportunities to bond with our cohort. So that can be like a difficult thing, but it works out. But that would be something like if they didn't overlap, that would be great. But they do. It's hard to work around that.
Also, I don't know if we mentioned this or if it's like as understood. So the Prime program and the Drew program, so we have friends who are just in Prime who just did this Prime summer program. And we have friends just in Drew who just did the Drew summer program. So honestly, we all like felt the same. It overlapped. So we were part of the group where sometimes we had Prime things in the morning and then Drew things in the morning. And sometimes it was hard to go to both of them. And I would also agree. I think sometimes there's that FOMO that you wish, I wish I could participate in this. But for me, honestly, I think both programs are exceptional. I don't really know if there's nothing I would change. However, because I like the people in the program so much, I would change. It would be cool to have more people in them. But it is really special that it's such a small program. But sometimes it's like, oh, I love everyone so much. We could have more. But I don't know if that's a real criticism.
There's a few more questions, but I think they can all be summed up if I ask each of you to go around and give one piece of advice to anyone out there who dreams of going to medical school, who dreams of being a part of a prime or a Drew program or something similar. What would you say to them, and what words of encouragement would you give? And we'll end it there.
I guess I can go first. During my pre-med, when I finally decided, okay, I'm going to be pre-med, and even before that, you definitely encounter people who try to put you in a box and tell you you can't, or you're not good enough, or you didn't do well freshman year. So like, that's, what are you talking about? And I wish I could tell my pre-med self, like, everything will work out fine. You just have to believe in yourself. There will be people who doubt you. Sometimes you will doubt you. And I think that, just stay true to what you value, pursue things that you love that ignite that flame inside of you. Upward trends matter, distance travel, I think, is like what med school admissions people say. All of that matters. Your story matters. I think that, I don't know, pre-meds tend to like focus on the numbers and all of that. And oh my God, I can only take the MCAT one time. I took it 2 times and everything worked out fine. And many people take it more than 2 times and everything works out fine. And so just know that if you are an imperfect applicant and people try to make you feel bad about that or make you think that you can't get in, that is definitely false. It may be harder. You may have to work on things and take more gap years or enrichment years, but in the end, it will help you, learn the study strategies you need to learn, become more resilient, and that will just allow you to thrive in med school, because it's hard. And I am so grateful for all the ups and downs I faced, because I don't think I would have been prepared for med school if I didn't face them. So you got this. And just, I don't know, that Kevin G quote from Mean Girls, don't let the haters stop you from doing your thing, or whatever it is.
I can go next. So for like advice, definitely echoing what Sam was saying, is that you don't have to rush yourself. It's a long process to the medical field, but the most important part is that that you take the time when you feel ready. You don't need to be like, and I know there's like always this pressure of people going in different periods of time, or going immediately, or like making sure you have all this on your resume. But it's all about you going at your own pace and taking care of, yes, you got to take care of like, the prerequisites and do the test scores. But don't like put yourself in such a situation where you like burn yourself out, whether you're like doing everything all at once just to catch up. Like, it's okay. Like you ask like anyone in our class, and it's like, yeah, some of us are at different stages in our life personally, but we made it in here. We took our time on our own path, and we made it here. So maybe if you don't feel like you're ready now, it's totally fine. Find something that you're passionate about that can also help you be like a great applicant. A project you're passionate about, a job or area or field, and just kind of keep open to like opportunities that can present itself. I'm trying to think if there's any other things that I would address. I feel like that's the most part. And also don't be afraid to ask for help, seek your mentors, reach out to people who are in medical school or also pursuing medical school, and just for that continuous support, and just like if opportunities present, and yeah, especially the encouragement. Surround yourself with a good community around you.
I also wanted to say that I know some questions were in the Q&A, and Sam, Precious, Bryce, and myself. I think we've answered all of them now in the Q&A, and some have more than one response, I believe. So please check those out. And if you have additional questions, just maybe post it before we run out of time. I think there was a question I read that said, what would you do as a pre-med when medical school seems so far away? I think that's a great question, because when I think about my advice, really everything everyone said hits for me really just heavily. But I would really echo people who said things like just about the timeline. When I graduated college, or right before I graduated, I had a schedule of when I was in USC, our freshman year, our advisor had asked us to make a calendar of classes we would take each semester of undergraduate, if you did a master's, if you're pre-med, when you would take the MCAT, things like that. And I had one that was made. A year in, I had to make a different one. It changed. A year after that, I had a semester where I decided no more science. I was going to take a break. So that changed because my schedule had to adapt. Then I decided to do a master's program, which was not on the original calendar. So it had to change. And each time it changed, I think if you are a person who sometimes struggles with change, or you are a very heavy planner, and I think many med students are, I think we sometimes forget that there's nothing wrong with things not going according to plan. And perhaps some of the best things have come from when things didn't work out the way they were intended to work out. I didn't know going into, my original plan didn't have a master's program. And it ended up being one of the best things that I think I've done with my academic career. I was, in my calendar thing that was made then, I was supposed to take the MCAT one time, be done with it, apply to med school. That did not happen. I took the MCAT more than once. And I didn't apply when I thought I would apply. I remember telling my mom, feeling like everyone, she describes it much better than I did, but I remember saying something like, everyone is starting and I'm not starting. Everyone is going and I'm not going. Everyone is moving and doing these things and I'm not. And it was so easy to feel like it was just me, and that somehow everyone would accomplish these goals and there I would be stuck. And this may not relate if you're not, if it's very early on in college. And if it is early on in college, most important thing, be open to change. But if you're in those enrichment years and you're feeling that stuck feeling, understand there's nothing wrong with time not looking according to what you think. The best things happen when we wait with purpose and never feel like you are on anybody else's timeline but your own timeline. Med school will happen. Whatever grad school it is, it will happen. Those goals will be reached. And you never know. You may end up enjoying the journey a lot more than you realized that you really thought that you would. And that was the case, I think, for me.
Everything that was said was wonderful and I resonate with it. So I guess just really quickly for me, I also believe that my failures and my setbacks are actually what defined my narrative more than like the successes and the things that went according to plan. And the strongest things that came out of my application came from them. When I graduated college, it was like my biggest fear is like, okay, like what do I do? Like education for me was always like my safety net, because I didn't really have too much stability like in my family, in my home life. So it was like, oh, okay, like how am I gonna take care of myself? So like I immediately was like, okay, I gotta find a job. And it just so happened like it was like a long road to getting into a good job that would allow me to study for the MCAT and like wouldn't like be physically taxing like working in the OR was. So yeah, so anyways, yeah, I like had to like throw everything away and was like, okay, let's just survive. And I moved back to LA from San Diego. I started working at Children's Hospital. And I found just kind of letting go and like not stressing about like my GPA, MCAT, all these other things. Like I found a great support system who, like from the resident doctors at Children's Hospital, who actually like helped me like in my application cycle and like finding encouragement when mentors told me like, oh, you know, I don't think you're a good applicant, or all these other like negative things that came my way. And I felt like we're kind of like shooting me down. Just kind of like trusting in the process, pouring into like the people who around me who were super positive and uplifting me, kind of like helped me on my goals, achieving my goals. So I really am big on not going by plan. I think like I'm trying to go back to that person before med school, because I feel like she had it more together than this one does, just kind of like going with the flow. Just like go stumbling along the path, because when I got to the end of the tunnel and I submitted my application and I was on my interviews and I could look back, I'm like, wow, like this is actually a pretty good story. Like, you know, I'm glad this is the person I have to like convince people like, yeah, let me into your school, because like, yeah, she might not have the highest GPA and highest MCAT score, but like, I believe her. I believe that she'll be a good doctor one day. So yeah, just like trust your narrative. Don't do anything because you think you have to. I did not traditionally study for the MCAT. I just kind of went with the flow that I felt like was good for me. So, and like, yeah, trust yourself. So that's me.
I think we'll go ahead and end it there. Huge thank you to all the attendees that came out tonight. I hope you enjoyed this wonderful panel, and huge thank you to our panelists. It was so inspiring to hear you all speak and learn from your experiences and your insight and guidance. So massive thank you. I really appreciate it. And on behalf of all of Med Mentors, we all appreciate it too. So thank you so much. And I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of the night.